please welcome David Hutchison from AMP to talk about a case study in the final B.
Thanks, Toby. Looking around the room, many of you will resonate with this photo. Might not necessarily be the face for all of you. Sometimes it might be the head or the legs or other parts. I'll leave that to your imagination. But clearly we all know the frustration of waking up early in the morning and having to deal with stubble. But that's not the only issue with shaving. If you go back to 2010, we had an industry for razors with two clear leaders who challenged themselves about what innovation was. Who challenged the idea around what innovation was, and kind of a third blade or a fourth blade or a hydrating strip or something was called innovation to try and promote us to buy more and more razors. And then Michael DeBond came along with a group of his mates at a party, clearly a different kind of party than I go to, and they came up with Dollar Shave Club. They didn't really change the product, but what they did is they looked to remove that friction point around buying blades. The frustration you had when you'd go to the supermarket, the blades would sometimes be behind locked cabinets, trying to make sure that you got the right blade for your hand unit at home, invariably having to take some back because you got that wrong. They changed it into a subscription service. They didn't change the blade, but they changed how you actually acquired it and used it. They solved the problem that consumers actually had. Go forward 6 years and they sold it to $1 billion to Unilever. So not a bad kind of outcome for actually not fundamentally shifting the product itself. The managed account industry is actually in the same position today as where the razor market was back in 2010. And so I want to understand where we are and how we should tackle this differently to be able to broaden the footprint for managed account users here in Australia today. So let's get into some of the data to start with. On the left-hand side, you've got the adoption of managed accounts by advisors, by our friends at Investment Trends. And so today we see about 3 in 5 advisors are users of managed accounts. Clearly that has driven a significant growth in the FUM in managed accounts. And we're up to $250 billion worth with the new numbers coming out soon. Toby, I'm sure will be a little bit higher than that as well. And you can see the growth rate coming through, good, consistent growth out into the managed accounts. What's interesting though is that $250 billion number is about a quarter of all advised assets. So if we've got 3 in 5 advisors using, but only 25% of assets in managed accounts, then we've got a few issues. Now clearly that's because some are still progressing and getting fully allocated, but as you can see on the left, there are still some who have used in the past and are no longer using, some that are thinking about it, and others that are non-users. So why is that? What's wrong with managed accounts that means 2 in 5 advisors are not using and we're still only at 25% of advised assets? To understand that, let's take a step back and say, how is it that advisors actually go about putting together portfolios for clients? And there are 5 main ways that advisors do this. If you go back in time, diversified was the kind of main way that advisors used to put portfolios together for clients. So that is, you go through your risk profile process, you typically select a single multi-asset or diversified fund that's aligned to that risk profile process, and that becomes the investment allocation or the portfolio for your clients. Clearly that's not very engaging for the clients because they get a single investment. So you really can't spend much time talking about what's going on in the portfolio. It lacks some real transparency, but it does give you good advisor efficiency, right? You're not having to worry about dealing with the investments. You're relying on your outsourced diversified fund provider to do that. So good efficiency, but low engagement, low transparency. We've seen that slowly disappear over the years. The second way that advisors have typically looked to run portfolios for clients is by using a paper-based model. And typically their licensee will sit there and say, you must follow this really strictly and really closely. Again, that involves some level of professional management, because either your research house or your licensee research team is doing the work around putting together the portfolio, researching managers underneath, working out how to blend them, thinking about the asset allocation. It's more engaging for clients because you have a more detailed conversation around the products that are actually in their portfolio, but it hits you on the efficiency side. Right? To make a change to your client's portfolios, it's going to take you 12 months to actually go through your entire client base, doing all the ROAs and SOAs and lovely paperwork that this industry puts together, to be able to let you go through and adjust all of your clients. So effectively, clients never have your best ideas, or it takes them 12 months to get that, and it's in a very, continual chase that you go through to get clients into your preferred, your best ideas of a portfolio. Obviously, a lot of today is then about the third way, managed accounts. Right? 3 in 5 advisors are already using. Clearly, it creates a lot of practice efficiencies, because rather than now getting permission to make the investment switch, you're telling clients that you've made the investment switch. Still a lot more engaging for clients because they get to see the transparency, they can see the changes in the portfolio as they happen, but you're getting the efficiencies as an advisor because you're not having to do that lovely paperwork that we all experience. And then the two at the bottom are where advisors want to get more involved themselves in some of the investments within a portfolio. So the fourth one, models as a guide. Again, using that paper-based model, but rather than following it really strictly, make adjustments or tailoring for that because of generally your client's best interests, or because of your preferred choices and your philosophy as a practice, your investment philosophy as a practice, as to how you want to adjust for those portfolios. And I'll come back to what are some of the reasons why you might tailor and adjust that base model portfolio shortly. Finally, there's still many advisors out there using research but building portfolios themselves. So not using a model portfolio provided by a research house or their licensee research team, or even hiring a consultant, but actually within the practice themselves, putting together a portfolio, working out what they want to do, what their solutions are for their individual investors, essentially creating a practice model, if you like, typically is how that works and operates. So 5 broad ways that advisors will put together and manage portfolios. The further down that list you go, generally the more is investing part of your advice philosophy, the more engaging do you want that conversation to be with clients, the more transparency do you have. Often you might get a little bit more granular in some of your allocations, but the less efficiency you get down towards the bottom. And so the challenge is, how do you actually manage both efficiency, client outcomes and client engagement to be able to deliver a solution for them? Then we look at how has the allocations to these changed over time. So this is just looking back over the last 5 years, and this is focused on the primary approach that the advisor uses. And I say primary because typically advisors will have different cohorts within their client base, and they will generally have 2, occasionally a third way of running portfolios. So generally the main way is about 70 to 75% of their client book on average. So that's the target that most advisors have got towards getting fully allocated into managed accounts. What you'll see here if you look over the time series is that you've seen the fall in the use of diversified funds as the primary way of running clients' portfolios, and strict models into managed accounts. Now, clearly there are exceptions to that rule, but historically, generally what we're seeing is those advisors who are used to outsourcing a lot of the investment decisions are looking now to use managed accounts to generate the efficiency. And so we haven't yet seen significant change in models as a guide or in self-select, right? Those advisors that still want a little bit more involvement in the portfolios aren't yet big adopters of managed accounts. And so why is that? Well, today, platforms are really only supporting two bookends. We either say take something off the shelf, or build a fully tailored proposition. Right, even the debate or the conversation we were having up here with Evidentia and Jana kind of said those were the two propositions. You're either at one end or the other. Do you want to build an investment committee? Do you want to then work out who your consultant is? How does all that operate? You know, get a fully tailored solution, or do you want to take a manager's solution off the shelf? And platforms play to that in different ways. If you're doing a full build, that may be at the licensee level or it may be at the practice level. But either way, you're getting two bookend solutions that are being provided. And so as a result of that, you can't expect to have seen those advisors who want to have a slight adjustment to a model or building their own models yet to go to a managed account solution, because their preferred way of running portfolios is not supported. They sit there in the middle. They generally like something that's going on around outsourcing and using it off the shelf, but don't want to use all of it. They want to adjust it and make some edits, some alterations. They want to blend their best ideas from their consultant with their client's best interests and the practical reasons around why they can't take a full solution off the shelf. So I mentioned I was going to come back to the different ways that advisors might want to blend and adjust the portfolio. And what we have is an Aspire overlay to a core portfolio that advisors want to do. 6 different reasons why they might want tailoring of a portfolio that spell out, you know, the different reasons that they look to use. And again, you know, Jana and Evidentia talked around some of these reasons. So first might be asset allocation. Either you want a little bit more of a granular exposure, so you might want small caps, or you might want EM or Asia in global equities rather than just relying on your global equity manager. You might want to try and execute some DAA or TAA if you believe you can do that. But you just want to tweak the core asset allocation that your consultant provides. The S is simplify. The most common example I've had advisors talk to me about with this one has been in the fixed income space. Clients don't understand fixed income at the best of times. They definitely don't understand when you put together fixed income funds. And so I'll just swap out all of my fixed income for a TD. You can argue over the investment merits of that, but it's a much simpler conversation to have with clients and generally is going to do okay in many scenarios. And so advisors are willing to run that issue. Different way more recently has been in Aussie equities. Advisors might want to go to direct equities, maybe working with a broker, or maybe working with a direct equity managed account as a single solution rather than multiple products and managers. We heard earlier about preferred managers. You know, an advisor has had a long exposure to particular managers, may not be your consultant's best ideas, but as long as they are a decent manager and they're not going to blow up the alpha, then given potentially CGT or the relationship that you have with that manager, you may well want to hold on. Indexing, or even DFA that was mentioned earlier. So within an asset class or across all asset classes, or to replace a single asset class. So you might index all of Aussie equities, just the concentration of the market being such that you don't think active is worthwhile, but anything else you want to utilise. And then retirement or ESG. So for different cohorts of your clients, you may want to have a slight adjustment for your retiree portfolios, so a bit more bias towards income, or maybe lower volatility products, or swapping out an active manager for an ESG manager for those clients that are a bit more responsible investing focused. And so 6 broad ways that we think around how advisors look to tailor the core portfolio that they want. But because they can't, if they want to do any of these, they can't do it in a managed account. We're still at the scenario with only 25% of advised assets yet to be into managed accounts. And so my proposition to you is that for managed accounts market to grow, we've got to think differently around customization. Today, platforms support 3 out of the 4 different levels of customization. There's none, of course. You can do no customization and just take the portfolio as a given. You can adjust it at an individual investor level. It might be for income, it might be for particular swaps, it might be directors' interests, it might be lock-ins for small caps and what have you. Different levels that you run at an individual investor level. It might be for naming and branding. So you want something more aligned to your practice, but you don't want to have to go to a full build, or you have a full build that you want named and branded appropriately. And all of those are generally supported across all of the platforms. But what is not yet is how do you blend your consultant's best ideas from a portfolio perspective and an investment theory perspective with your client's best interests and your practical needs to be able to get your whole practice being a slightly tailored portfolio. So this change is then saying, rather than having to do everything at an investor level, so if you wanted to swap a manager out, you would have to do that today across your 110 clients on average. That's not effective. And so if we're thinking about efficiency being the reason you want to use managed accounts, you don't want to do things at an investor level. You want to manage it at a practice level. How do I run a portfolio that is semi-tailored rather than fully customized and fully built? So that then gives us a different way to think about the spectrum for managed account portfolios. When you go through thinking about a managed account proposition and how you might look to adopt managed accounts, there are 2 main decisions that you make. The first is who owns it. Do you as the advice practice want to own it? Does the licensee want to own it and encourage you to use that? Or are you happy that the asset manager still owns it? Right? All of those are valid calls. And then what level of customization do you want to do that I spoke to on the prior slide? And the portfolio solutions that are out there today fit into the left-hand side of this. So either you take something off the shelf, i.e. the asset manager owns it, or you build something for the practice, or your licensee builds something. And there are variations on a theme that fits within that. But what we're talking about today is to help managed accounts shift beyond that 25% and really significantly grow. What we need to think about is this forgotten advisor set. Those who tailor by aspire. Right? They look to make adjustments to the portfolio to get the way that they want to manage portfolios for clients. And so by doing this, there are significant opportunities to broaden that footprint for managed accounts. First of all, re-engaging with prior users. So having spoken with many advisors or advisors out there who have tried managed accounts and stopped using, it is generally because it doesn't suit the way they want to run portfolios, or because of the engagement method challenge. They haven't thought through the engagement method and what goes on. And so we can now re-engage with those prior users. They wanted to tailor a off-the-shelf solution. They didn't want a fully customized version. And so they've stopped going back to model portfolios. Well, we can now help them to execute. We can win non-users. We saw that 1 in 5 advisors have declared they are a non-user of managed accounts. Again, generally, that's because they want to have some involvement in investing, but don't want to have to build a fully customized managed account. Thirdly, we can also help advisors who are primary users, but are only at that 70 or 75% of clients' assets in managed accounts, because the other portion typically needs some level of tailoring. So again, we can help them to be able to get more assets in managed accounts and realise the benefit, the practice efficiencies that they get from managed accounts. And then, of course, finally, there's our non-primary users. So today, if we've got 3 in 5 advisors who do use managed accounts, but only 25% of advisors advised assets in managed accounts, that means there is a lot of advisors out there in that 3 in 5 who are nowhere near fully allocated. Right? They've tried it a little bit, but they want to do some more. This option of being able to tailor a little bit and being able to aspire to tailor gives them more flexibility about thinking and leveraging the benefits of managed accounts. And so if we go back to where we started, much like managed accounts, much like shaving, sorry, we all know and love managed accounts, but it comes with frustrations. And so much like buying blades was the frustration that Michael identified, what we've said is the reason why advisors aren't adopting at the rate that we think they should be is because we don't provide the options for them to tailor the way they want to. We aren't here to change managed accounts. We're here to help you guys to be able to realise the benefits of them. And that's where North is different. With some of the things we've done to help advisor efficiency around retirement, around advice execution, around reporting, and now thinking differently around managed accounts, we think that can help you to solve the advice gap that we have in Australia today. So thank you.
Thanks very much, David. Now, are there questions for David about the process, about the scope of tailoring that this gives rise to? Because I have a question. Yeah, Pete. We love it when there are people who ask questions.
Yeah, thought you did.
Very interesting. I may have missed something. So what is this Inspire thing?
So Inspire is how you guys operate today. What we've done is create essentially, how do you adjust the core portfolio that a consultant might put together? So advisors for years have been saying, I'll use an example. I love Lonsec. What they put together is really good. But say I don't want to use GQG because I've had Magellan in my portfolio for 15 years. So I've adjusted a little bit. Right? And then I look at what Lonsec does, and if they change asset allocation, I'll follow that. If they change other managers, I'll follow that. But I manage that Magellan substitution, if you like. So it's about letting Lonsec manage a parent portfolio, and then you just having to manage the substitution or the adjustments to that, rather than having to create a whole tailored portfolio.
And what, that's on two different platforms? That's on the same platform?
Same platform.
So what, 2 accounts or like, or
No, so
I just don't get quite what your product solution looks like.
Yeah.
I can sort of hear what you're trying to solve.
It's for you guys, it's still a managed portfolio, right? So there is no different to allocating a managed portfolio that you would do today. It's just we provide one for you and your practice that has got your tailoring in it. So it still, to you, feels like a tailored solution because that's what you want, but you don't have to go through the process of building an investment committee and going through the rigor and the process of building up a fully tailored solution, because you're essentially adjusting a off-the-shelf solution a little bit rather than doing a full build.
And just one last comment.
Yep.
That slide you had up there with Aspire, the reasons why there's the gap.
Yep.
Yeah, simplicity is one of them.
Yes.
I would argue there should be complexity in there because not every practice needs maximum efficiencies and scalability, right?
Yep.
So there'd be a chunk, part of the reason why you've got that gap between the number of advisors and the percentage of assets under management in managed accounts is because there's businesses who may only have 100 clients and they don't need to, and I imagine they would have
absolutely
more assets per client. So suspect a big chunk of the answer is for a reason you haven't got on your slides. But
Yeah, I mean, simplicity kind of covered where you might have gone direct equity Aussie
But
example.
they couldn't think of an
different
acronym that had
allocations.
C in it.
Yeah, that was the other, and that was the problem. But yes.
Spicer, right. Other questions for David? I have one about the degree, the extent of variation that as the RE you're prepared to support.
So we haven't been challenged on the extent to which that is at the moment. The conversations we're having vary by kind of that core consultant as to how far they want to go. So like we are really focused around, so the most common swap outs that we've got is around index, preferred managers, simplify, and retirement, I would say would be the four main ones. So we haven't had anyone challenge us on asset allocation yet. Generally, advisors are happy, consistently following asset allocation being provided. We've got a way to manage it, but we haven't had anyone come to us with the idea of that yet.
Any other questions? Look, please join with me in thanking Hutch.